Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is Two Up and Two Down. Here's our producer, Chris, to start us off.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Two Up and Two Down. Today, we're doing season 3, and I like this season because I love to hear your guys' opinions on season 3 episodes. And today, we're doing the fix-up. Tony, what do you have for your first one?
Yeah, this episode, the fix-up, we got to find 2 ups, we got to find 2 downs. Downs were very hard to find. I have 2 pages of ups. Oh. First up on the fix-up is the opening scene. Are we talking about the epitome of Seinfeld writing? Season 3, Elaine Pope and Larry Charles. One of the best relationship dating scenes you're ever going to see. They cut back and forth, Jerry and George talking. George, I don't want hope. Hope is killing me. My dreams become hopeless. When you're hopeless, you don't care. That indifference makes you attractive. Then Elaine and Cynthia, you could be young and bitter. It's got everything. The 2 of them talking, the guys and the girls cutting back and forth, written by Elaine Pope and Larry Charles, getting both angles of everything, as good as it gets. This is some of the best dialogue you're going to see in a sitcom episode. This is similar to The Deal, similar to The Beard. This is why we like Seinfeld. This is where, that kind of relationship dialogue stuff comes into play. This epitomizes it early on in season 3. Opening scene, Jerry and George talking about George's hopelessness. Elaine and Cynthia talking about Cynthia trying to find a guy, can't find a good guy. The good guys, they're too good for you. The bad guys think they're not good enough for you. Just amazing insight, just summed it all up perfectly. That's my first up.
No arguments here, because that is a fantastic scene. Chris, back to you. What do you got for your first up?
Yeah, this won an Emmy. To be honest, Elaine Pope and Larry Charles. What more can you say? And that first scene was great. And there's many scenes for sure. I'm going to kick off. I laugh every time. So after they do the whole setup thing, George comes in and he says she had to be impressed with that phone call. He was his face. I was, the whole thing. They should just have 2 phones on the table at the restaurant, the whole thing. And then obviously when Elaine comes in, as we see a lot in Seinfeld, whether it's Elaine or George, they're both, I guess, in the opposite. They're similar, right? They can bring each other up and down and just crushed him. He was so happy. That's it. I'm only going out there once, and that's it. I loved it. Just loved it. When George comes back and usually that's a Monk's thing, so it's interesting that they did that at Jerry's apartment. And this was a Jerry's apartment episode, which I enjoyed. So George coming back, so happy, and then getting so low based on just Elaine's reaction, like, oh yeah, it was a good phone call, whatever. First up.
Yeah, another excellent choice there. So Tony, your second up, what do you got?
Yeah, he just nailed everything right there. So good. My second up on this episode is the second scene. Are you kidding me? Just, George asking Jerry, what does she look like? I don't want anyone smarter than me. How can she smarter than you? They sit down together on the couch, cross their legs at the same time. The whole thing, unbelievable. Cascading hair, rosy glow, not too sweet. Don't want to throw up from that. Pinkish hue. And then you switch to the Cynthia and Elaine talking about it. Her first question, what does he do? The whole thing, he tried to poison his boss. He lift 100 pounds over his head. The whole, again, just carried over from the first scene. The second scene's almost probably better. The guys talking about the girl's talking about the guys, what they care about. Perfectly sums it all up. You're not getting better than this. That's my second up.
All right, the ups keep on rolling. And Chris, your second up.
Yeah, I loved it. You hesitated, like, I don't want anyone smarter than me. Rosie Glow. I mean, you mentioned the Cynthia stuff. You know, for me, she's a Seinfeld. Friends, come on. But he's not working. He's bald. I mean, talk about just packed. I mean, Elaine and Jerry at their best. Uh, but my up's going to be. We haven't mentioned them. It's the K-Man. The obviously the condom stuff's funny, but there's two little scenes there where he's kind of the referee, if you will. Obviously, when he talked about the defective condoms and he's breaking up the fight and all that stuff with George and Jerry, it's just over a woman. Like he always just gets right to the core of it, right? Like it's all about relationships with Kramer, and he's just that guy that just it just keeps it smooth. And then obviously later with Jerry and Elaine, can't you see you're in love? Everything's right in front. I mean, I would have loved to have been in the writing room with Elaine Pope and Larry Charles on this one. I mean, you could see it was really a joint effort. And obviously, Larry and Jerry probably put their bow on it. But for me, the K-Man was just fantastic in this episode. Not stealing the show, but being just a really positive part of the show that uplifted it, quite frankly. So, and when you think about it, you don't really think about Kramer in this episode, but you should. So, second up is K-Man.
All right, yeah, good point about Kramer there. All right, Tony, we're going to do it at downs. What's your first down, if you got any?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to O'Hara's the whole when George loved the phone conversation, and then Jerry just sticks up for George, where he's just like, "I could have mentioned the phone conversation." Love that too. On top of it, and Chris, you're right. Do I have downs? I literally wrote down on my sheet. I could not find downs. I mean, downs were hard to find here. This episode, there's no fat on this episode. It is perfectly written. Everything, even the Kramer stuff Chris just touched on, both times he comes in, don't you see? He already mentioned it, but we got to give downs. That's why we're doing this. And I do this a lot, and it might be a cop out, but my first down is Jerry's stand-up. Gotta give it as a down. I'm not finding much in the episode. Jerry talking about the conductor. I just an odd stand up. I don't know. It had nothing to do with the show. Usually the stand up has something to do with the show. I feel like this may have been maybe for the Pez dispenser or later on for the maestro. He's talking about conductors. It was just an odd stand up bit. Had nothing to do with the actual show. Wasn't that funny. The show is just too good and too tight to really find downs. Glad I went first. That's my first down is Jerry's stand-up.
All right there. And Chris, what's your first down?
Yeah, I wish I went first. Now, I did have the stand-up. I was okay with the opening one, but the condom one, like, oh, there should be secret signals at the drugstore. Yeah, you got to get nitpicky here, and it's lines, okay? This one never sat well with me. There's just no need for it. But again, this kind of the early seasons, like the button thing. It was the opening scene. Are my nostrils getting bigger? The Jerry line. I don't know. Like, I don't even get it. I guess it was just supposed to be like, I think they were just, that might have been a Jerry line. Like, hey, let's keep the consistency about the show about nothing. I can see Larry Charles. I can see actually them fighting over this line. No, we don't need it. Come on. It's just the basics. So, the nostril line, it's not awful, but it's just a throwaway that I don't think was needed in a tight episode that Tony mentioned.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that one out. Tony, what's your second down?
Yeah, that's a valid point. I think the nostrils things, I didn't write it down, but as he mentioned it, I do remember thinking about it. I mean, my second down is a very nitpick. I'm going with, I know Chris mentioned it and I agree with him. I just don't think it's enough Kramer. I think my down is season 3, Kramer, he's the one who delivers the condoms. He's the one who comes in and breaks up the 2 fights, but he doesn't really have anything going on in his world, which is not a bad thing. And again, I'm looking for down. So I mean, it's not a big down, but if I'm going to find something, I would have loved Kramer to have something. Later on, down the line, Kramer gets involved in something similar to this, where Kramer's boys swim, if you will. Uh, that could have been tied to this one, maybe, but love Kramer's use him to George. Love Kramer coming and breaking up both. But I got to find a second down. So my second down is just maybe not enough Kramer, no Kramer real storyline involved in this scene episode. It's my second down.
All right, no, well, I could agree, and not enough Kramer, but hey, he's got to be hanging out with Bob Sacamano to get those condoms. So, all right, Chris, over to you. What's your second down?
Yeah, I think that's the fan in you talking versus the analyst. I think you wanted more K-Man. But listen, he was a supporting actor for a reason. Let's, and guy won Emmys, okay? And he probably should have for this episode as that supporting actor. Fantastic. Yeah, downs are tough, but I actually have a couple, and this is nitpicky. Let me know if anyone else picked up on this, but, well, first off, I'll take both because they tied in together. The Jerry and Elaine on the split screen together, it went on a little too long, but part of that was George, right? George said he just got home. Okay? Now, but then he told Jerry he had sex at their place. So what do you mean he just got home? If he had sex at their place, how did he just get home? Right?
Fair.
Yeah, so again, I don't know if that's editing. I don't Skip Collector probably would have picked up on that. We know, friend of the show. So little things like that will give a slight down. I'm not going to kill it, but when you watch it, you're like, wait a minute, what do you mean just got? Because they called each other at the same time. I get it for television, but the whole kind of split screen thing went on a little too long, and then obviously the George stuff didn't make sense. So second down.
All right. Thank you for pointing that one out. And we're going to do the grades. So, Tony, start us off with your grade and comments, please.
Yeah. So we all know, I think, sort of that split screen conversation stuff and the painting stuff. For those trivia guys out there and gals who are going to get on us. Yes, we know Elaine was pregnant during these episodes, which is why they kind of shot her from above and didn't have her really doing much. And she was painting with those clothes on and all that stuff. Yeah, we got it. Okay. My grade for the fix up is an A. I was teetering on an A plus, to be honest with you. I wouldn't argue an A minus. I don't think it's going to go any lower than anything in the A range, in my opinion, just because it's so well written. I mean, as Chris mentioned, it won an Emmy for a reason. I mean, this is like a perfect one-act play. I mean, this should be like studied in television colleges and screenwriting classes for eternity. How do you write a perfect episode? This is how you do it. There's nothing wrong. Everything is cut perfectly. The opening scene cut to the next scene. I mean, everything is no fat in this episode. It's Larry Charles at his finest. I mean, anyone who ever questions season 3 of Seinfeld, watch this episode. Tell me you're going to find a better written sitcom. You're not going to find a better written sitcom. And I gave Kramer as a down, and Kramer was amazing. As Chris mentioned, he comes in, he breaks them both up, does his speeches. Don't you guys see what's going on here? The whole thing. I mean, nothing's wrong with this episode. It's literally perfect in my opinion, but it's not an A plus. I have to be fair. There's just not enough to carry it that far. I almost wanted to give it an A minus for that reason, but I talked myself into a solid A here. I think the fix up, and I'm probably the minority, but the fix up's an A.
All right. Thank you, Tony. And over to you, Chris. What's your grade?
You're talking a little bit in circles there with all these grades and the perfection of the episode. And I loved how you talked about if it was a play, a one-step play. That's what it is. Whew. I have one grade here, but I'm boosting it because it was a 97 in my book. This is an A plus. This is an A plus. I mean, when you think about it, when you're watching, like, oh yeah, but when you analyze this as an analyst, oh my! I mean, this is what the show's about. It's about friends. It's about relationships. It's about two exes talking. It's about that crazy neighbor. I mean, my boys can swim at the end. George going crazy. The ups and downs of Costanza. I love them sitting at the kitchen even the last scene. George pigging out with the food. What an ending! We didn't even talk about the ending, right? Them all getting together. Jerry he's that friend. You mentioned it to George, sticking up for him. Well, she owes him a phone call. I knew I should have never set up. And Elaine supporting her friend. Like that's life. But this is what it's all about. You mentioned it won an Emmy for a reason. Larry Charles, Elaine Pope, perfection. Yeah, although it didn't have all these catchphrases and anything like that. You know what? You have that, Pink Cat fans. Go have it. But the tightness, the no fat you mentioned. You're giving his stand up a down. I'm giving a nostril down. I mean, you got to. I mean, this was just. It's an A plus. It's a shame only 18 million people watched this episode back in the day, when 30,000,005 watched the Frogger. But wonderful, wonderful writing, incredible acting. A plus.
Wow! I just can't believe you one upped me. I thought I was going higher than you. You went higher than me with the A plus. You can't argue it.
You pumped it up. You gave it. I think you gave it a little low of a grade. Well, you gave it an A, yeah. But you were talking about A minuses.
I wrote down. I think. Fuck, man. I mean, A plus is what it deserves. Now you talked me into it, but I gave it. You're higher. All right.
Listen, I had A originally, but what an episode. Underrated, believe it or not.
Yeah, that part bothers me when you start getting underrated stuff. These people are underrated. Whenever you hear underrated, it's a Pink Hat fan talking about 3 episode. And that's where I get a little bit like, who underrated it? Like we didn't underrate it. We just gave it an A plus. So it's not okay. It's not underrated.
Well, this was an episode in season 3 where, yes, the essence of the show was this type of episode. So, yeah, thank you guys. I think those were well-deserved grades, and thank everybody for checking in on us. And I hope you come back for another episode of 2 Up and 2 Down. We'll see you guys later.